Commissioner, to you and your team. Mr. Birch, I think, am I right in saying this is your last meeting?
I think it may well be.
May well be, but the question mark remains. Okay, well, thank you. Before I start with the agenda, and welcome to members of the press and other people that are with us today. Before I start on the agenda, clearly, Commissioner, the funding issue still remains, and I wondered if you could give us an update, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, I mean, the funding issue has been the number one issue for many, many years for Lincolnshire Police. And it isn't just Lincolnshire Police. All public services are affected by funding formulas, government that do not support sparsity and large rural counties such as Lincolnshire. So we're disadvantaged in many ways, not least of which because with partnership working, obviously we all rely on each other. So if all of our budgets are negatively affected by the formula, that has a knock-on effect to all of our services. But at the very pointy end of that, I would say the Lincolnshire Police budget is probably one of, if not the most affected budgets. And I would say that the good news is that a very positive dialogue continues with government. The slightly frustrating news is we were due to have what should have been a very positive, productive meeting with the police minister, only to find that 2 days previously there was a reshuffle, which is frustrating. So we've spent months building up a really positive working relationship and obviously getting the minister to understand the issues and the nuances. What we have got is a really positive engagement with the officers who assure us that they understand the importance of briefing the new minister as quickly as possible, bringing her up to speed with the issues. There isn't anybody that seemingly doesn't believe that Lincolnshire has got some specific challenges which are not of our making, not least of which the new minister spoke recently at the Superintendents Association nationally and specifically mentioned Lincolnshire when it came to challenges around funding. So clearly that message is getting through. And I'm still hopeful of positive outcomes from those conversations. And I would thank all of the stakeholders and partners from around Lincolnshire that have added their supportive voices to government to make them understand the impact that it would have if we have to reduce services further. One of the key elements we've got at the moment, which is a real challenge for us, is the fact that while we are trying to maintain service levels, the uncertainty of these cliff edges that we keep working toward is very, very disconcerting, understandably, for staff. If your livelihood depends on an income and you're not sure when that income will be certain until, you can understand why people would look for alternative employment. And so what we're finding is the vacancy rates are growing, and that is making it harder and harder to meet the service standards that we want the public to get. So getting some clarity sooner rather than later is really important to let the staff and the officers know that there is a positive future ahead, which is certainly what we want and what the public deserve. But those conversations, positive though they are, continue. So I will obviously keep the panel updated with any developments, but at this stage, I can just assure you that the Chief and I are doing everything we can. We're getting really positive engagement with all of our MPs around the county. They've already contacted the new minister as well, urging an early outcome for this. So at the moment, we're still in that holding pattern where we're trying to move things forward. But as I say, I always consider it a positive. If government aren't saying no, then you're moving forward. Because they're very fond of saying no to funding requests, as we'll all appreciate. So the fact that they're not doing that is a positive, and we keep moving.
Okay, thank you. I mean, the last meeting where the Chief Constable was here as well, I think you said that October was the timeline for difficult decisions to be made, and clearly October is not far away. So let's hope that you can have a meeting with the new minister as soon as possible and get an outcome for Lincolnshire.
Absolutely. let's say there's lots of moving parts. We're doing our very best to get those outcomes. And as I say, the conversations are ongoing with officials on a regular basis, and that's really important because ultimately, obviously, they will offer the advice to the minister. So I think was it this week, the last one, or
Last week.
last week? So very frequent conversations are being.
Councillor Martin.
So I understand and feel your frustration down in Parliament. I don't know which is worth actually getting a new minister in or speaking to the old one that was gone within a week, because I was down in Westminster with the members of Parliament minus one who had some car trouble, and generally speaking, it was a very well received meeting. Everybody in that room are on the same page, wanting to go forward. We may have slightly different views as to how we are here. I don't think that was particularly well received by some of the MPs that were there. But generally speaking, we were all on the same page, and everybody in that room, including the now no longer Police Crime Commissioner, Minister, were very aware of the situation in Lincolnshire. And I took it as a very positive and good meeting, but she was gone within a week.
Okay, Mr. Williams, thank you.
I don't know if you're able to address this, but in relation to the funding formula, what is your assessment of the likelihood of being reviewed, and what is the sense across all forces? Because if it's reviewed, there will be at the very least perceived losers as well as perceived benefit. And I guess politically that makes it a really difficult decision to make ever when we're going to have a number of things. So to assessment of where that might go and the sort of time frame we might be talking about.
Yeah, I mean, ultimately, the funding formula is the key to fairness across the system. The only way to avoid winners and losers is to put more money in, and I think that's reasonably unlikely. The government will do that in the current economic climate. There was some conversation where they were saying that they would address the way forces were funded as part of the productivity review, which is ongoing. However, the funding for the productivity review has been slashed because of lack of money in government. So therefore, holding a productivity review with no funding to deliver the productivity review means its scope will be massively reduced. So I don't hold out massive hope that it will deliver the productivity gains for policing that they hoped. This last general election was the first general election in the last three where no political party promised to reform the funding formula for policing. Bearing in mind it was a political promise by both main parties for the last three, and they still didn't do it. I think it's reasonably unlikely, if they haven't put it in their manifesto, that they would then magically do it, because, as they would say on Yes Minister, it's courageous to reform the funding formula if you're not putting more money in. It's very hard to say to Cumbria you're going to lose 20% of your police funding, or the Met, or any of the others that probably would lose under that change. So I don't think the funding formula is likely to change. What probably my best outcome would be that it's recognised it's not just Lincolnshire, it's probably half a dozen forces, but we're at the spearhead of, that need some emergency funding until they get to the point of delivering the funding formula change, whether that's 5 years or 10. It needs that recognition that they can't do nothing.
So what about the prospect of restructuring then? The other.
Well, obviously I'm not a minister, but as usually restructuring costs money rather than saves money would be my assessment, and that doesn't matter whether it's local government, health, whatever. Moving the deck chairs doesn't generally make a saving for at least a decade. We saw that in Scotland, it didn't save any money. But you could do that. The problem is, let's say you decided to merge Lincolnshire and Humberside police forces together to make a huge force across that area. You are still only giving the same amount of money per head of population as you are now, unless you uplift us to the amount that you give Humberside, in which case you don't need to merge us, you just give us that money. And that would solve the problem. So the merging bit is a red herring. It wouldn't solve the problem. It just needs an appropriate level of funding. to be able to deliver the function.
Okay. Councillor Burt, thank you.
Thanks, Chair. I wonder if you could guide us, Commissioner, in terms of the conversations that you had. Do the ministers, the old and the new minister, recognise our reality that, and everyone else's reality, that county lines means that in underfunding Lincolnshire Police historically over the last 20 years means that crime is just exported from an area with more policing to an area with less policing? Do you think that people get that?
I honestly do think the ministers get that, because it's a well-known phenomenon, particularly with county lines. We are an importer, not an exporter, from a net perspective of crime. So there will be more organised crime groups outside Lincolnshire wishing to do business in Lincolnshire than the other way around. That's one of the reasons why, when you look at our road network, some 5,500 miles of road across Lincolnshire, we need an effective roads policing unit that not just deals with the huge amount of tragedy on our roads, but also as a crime fighting force to repel our borders, if you like, from travelling criminality that might come from the north, the south, wherever. The issue is that there's no financial recognition of that. So at the moment, the length of your road network, the size of your county, is not part of the funding formula. The fact that we get funding in Skegness for the 25,000 residents that are there, not the 250,000 people that reside there in summer. Those kind of things are issues, and strangely enough, it's those that were due to be addressed in the funding formula, but obviously haven't been. And when you add into that, you've got a huge amount of people that live in Lincolnshire for 11 months of the year in static homes, predominantly on the East Coast, but not exclusively, who don't pay council tax for the services they use, the tens of thousands of people, but their site pays a business rate, which doesn't benefit the police in any way, shape or form. So those kind of things, I think, do need to be looked at holistically to make services better for people and fairer funded for people.
Okay, Councillor Burt,
Thank you.
thank you very much. Councillor Dills.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, thank you. I mean, funding, it's, I think we all recognise, of course, all of us and hopefully wider, people recognise there's a funding issue that is clearly contributing to the problems that Lincolnshire are facing right now. I remember, as a member of the Police Authority, reading a report, I think it was about 1997 or 1998 annual report of Lincolnshire Police, that said that what we need is the funding formula to be revised. Has it actually been revised since then at all?
Because it was revised in Tony Blair's time. In Tony Blair's time, it was revised, but I can't remember what year that was, but it would have been late 90s, I'm guessing. But it was felt, I think, by government at the time that there was needed to be a greater focus on more urban areas. So funding tended to go down in rural areas and up in urban. And I'm not making a judgment. I wasn't in a position to know whether that was right or not, but that was the upshot of that funding review. What's really interesting, there's a report that's available online by the chair of the Police Federation for Cumbria, who, if we had the same funding mechanism as them, we could have an extra 1,000 officers, who are saying how hardly done by they are. And actually, they're basically saying we've got about 155 police officers per 100,000 population. Theirs is about 252. But they're saying how terrible that is, because if you go to, for example, Italy or Portugal, they have between 400 and 500 officers per 100,000 population. So when you look at where we are against the European standard of policing, it's even greater, the gulf. So there's some argument to say, are we benchmarking against the wrong thing? Because if we're benchmarking against a high watermark that is still almost 50% of what it is elsewhere in Europe, it's a very low number indeed. So it is quite difficult to know what the right number should be. And I think in some respects, I would urge them to look at a Royal Commission for Policing. What is the mission for policing? What do you want policing to actually do? What do you want it not to do? What do you want other agencies to do? And nobody's really had that debate in a very long time. Because if you say we don't want policing to be doing as much social work as it's doing, then you need to fund the other services accordingly and realign. If you say, no, we're happy for policing to do that and we want them to do more, fund them to do it. So I think that bigger debate, it would be good if government had it at that really high level to really say, what is it we want public services to deliver for us? Because I think there's some confusion about that with policing.
Yeah, can I just follow up, if I may?
Yes.
Chairman? And yeah, thank you for that. I mean, I recognise that, and clearly we've got the county council on side regarding funding. Hopefully, the districts, you mentioned that the MPs are, hopefully that includes the MP who's a member, the Lincolnshire MP who's a member of the government, presumably. But what more is there anything that we, or perhaps I should say local government, can do, you know, to more to sort of back that case? So
I think everybody's backing it as they can. I think there is a concern that I have because all partners' funding is tight, as I said, and it always has been. But there are cost shunts happening between partners at the moment that mean the decisions I'm taking mean I will be picking up things that have historically been funded by other partners, which means fewer police officers while I pay for things that others have previously paid for. And that's unexpected. And it's genuinely a surprise and making it even harder. And so often, I suppose, along with the warm words, needs to come a match in the actions, because otherwise that's going to leave us under more pressure. So the problems that I'm facing when you're setting budgets, if you're getting unexpected cost pressures from partners retreating from services, that is making it harder. So having that partnership approach where we all understand that, you know, we have to work together, I think is going to be really important. So that would be the thing I would urge partners to do.
So may I ask, how near are, I mean, obviously, we're aware of the threats, if we call them that, or the problem that we may have to cut police numbers seriously. Where are we with that? How near are we to that scenario?
Well, the big problem we've got is the fact we've missed one recruitment. I've got plans to recruit September, so any day, if it's not already happened, any day. And we've got a recruitment plan. The problem is missing one recruitment. Those people should be coming out of training now, and they're not. With retirements and transferees and everything else that happen normally, that leaves your vacancy rate growing, which means that even though we haven't actively reduced police officer numbers intentionally, we are seeing a bigger stretch. And even if we suddenly find ourselves with funding that means we can recruit more, we will continue to go down before we can come up, because you'll put people into training, but your operational deployable will still continue to go down. And that's where we will have a temporary issue. So we might have 6 months to a year where it will continue to go down before it can fall back up again. And this is why we're urging government to sort of give us an early indication, because the longer it goes on, the longer that dip will last before we can pull back up. And we're already at the point where we're seeing assaults on officers increasing. We're seeing stresses and strains of things like sickness absence and other things because of gaps in there. The same is happening with the staff. So only the other week, we lost 5 people from the force control room in a week who need to have security of employment, found jobs elsewhere. Well, obviously, we want to retain those people. They're hugely important, very valued. And we need that certainty around the funding to be able to offer that security to the experienced staff that we've got. So even if we don't take the drastic action of reducing actively the numbers, the attrition that happens because people are leaving is doing significant damage to the organisation's ability to function and deliver service. So that's why we need that certainty, because otherwise we'll get to the point where the service will have been negatively affected significantly, even without us taking action.
Thank you for that. That's really a cliff edge, but thank you, Chairman. And
Thank you
for the discussion. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Dills. Thank you, Commissioner. 2 members still want to come in. Councillor Bailey, did you want?
Yeah, I've got two things really. On a positive thought, if government were to say, yes, we're going to have this funding formula, you're going to get everything free. How long would that realistically take to put into place that where they should be actually see the benefits? So my concern is that if that were to happen, we've still got this time period that we've got to contribute with. So that was my first question.
So we've got a plan, as you'd expect, and there's lots of elements to that plan. So recruitment of staff is something that we can do quickly because obviously the training levels are different depending on the roles that people are doing. So if, for example, if you need to fill a space in HR and you employ a HR professional, it might be, apart from getting them vetted, etc., it's a case of onboarding them to your systems rather than training them from scratch. Where a police officer has to go through 20 odd weeks, formal training, then go through and do probation, etc. So it depends on the role. It depends on the level that you're recruiting to. So we would take action very quickly to recruit the staff roles. There's also on the more uniformed side, we've got PCSOs and we've got police officers. So there is various options that the Chief Constable is looking at. But again, bringing in some neighbourhood capacity through PCSOs can happen quicker than the entire training regime for officers. So there would be a blended approach to try and make sure that the frontline officers were supported and freed up from duties that they may be undertaking now that could be undertaken by staff members. And equally, then there would be a regular recruitment regime. So rather than having a police officer recruitment regime, which is sort of every 6 months, we bring in sort of 60 or whatever, we could do it that every other month 20 were brought in. So it would be a rolling programme. And we think that would enable the training team to deliver more training across a greater number of people. And at the same time, they would be coming out of the other end and going out to stations in a more controlled number. So lots of plans are ready to go that would enable us to really make that difference as quickly as possible to the communities and to the front line of policing without overwhelming those that would have to mentor new recruits, etc. So I think we've got a good plan.
Thank you for that. That's more it might have been the way that I worded the question. That is when you are given the money, presumably. I'm talking about the bit where government says, yes, you can have it, but first we need to do all this. What is that timescale from that point to actually money in the bank?
Well, we need a transitional arrangement. So in some respects, and this is something that can happen, a letter of comfort from government can do that. So if, for example, they wrote to me today and said, well, it would be in the next financial year that we would deliver this settlement, but we're telling you we will, we can get on now and start because I've got that confidence that they will do that. And because this year, we've obviously seen the vacancy factor growing, that has delivered an underspend because we've planned to spend that on wages. And obviously if people are leaving and aren't being replaced, then that delivers an underspend. So that would give us the ability to use that funding immediately to get on and start the recruitment programme. So even if, they were saying, well, from April, we could give you the money, as long as that was a certainty, we would be able to crack on immediately.
And the other point, the point that you made earlier in relation to partners retreating from services and you picking up the bill, is that not something maybe that then shouldn't be a priority? Other partners and services are saying, well, we can't choose to put our money into that because it is not a priority. Would it still necessarily be a priority for you, or should you really be looking at that and thinking, well, actually, maybe money would be better put in this pot as opposed to that, if these services are also thinking, well, we need to pull back on it?
It sort of depends what it is, I suppose, because
that would give you the opportunity to review that then, wouldn't it?
Oh, we would always review that, but it depends what it is. So it might be something, for example, that has been invested to reduce reoffending. So if we don't invest that, then we'll get more offending. So we'll have more victims of crime. So you've got to weigh up, okay, if we invest in that thing, whatever it is that a better investment than one extra police officer who would have tackled the crime that will be created if you don't spend it on that thing. And they're judgment calls that we have to make all the time. But I understand people have finite budgets. I really understand that. But what we're in danger of doing is stripping back to we only do what's statutorily ours to do. That's not what partnership's about. And if we all did that, then we wouldn't be working together on anything. And that's when it becomes a real problem. So there are certain things that aren't statutorily anybody's to do, but if we don't do them, then safeguarding doesn't happen effectively, and that's everybody's business. So there are areas that we are just, you have to do. There's other things that it's right to do, and other things that you review and make judgment on whether you can afford to do it. So all of that has to happen. But I'm trying not to be specific, because what I'm not trying to do is come here and sort of pick on any particular partner or any particular thing. But in the general sense, we need to make sure that we're sort of having proper open conversations and working together. And we can't all fund everything. I understand that. But it's making sure we give enough time that we can commission the services or indeed withdraw from them safely or whatever, rather than it being a very quick, we're no longer doing that, and then you haven't got time to commission something properly, which is always going to be a challenge.
Thank you. Councillor Corey?
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you for that, Mark. I was going to ask the question that Emma asked, her second question, and I support your reticence in not wanting to point any fingers, but could you give us more of an idea, though, just for the purpose of this discussion, what kind of things what costs have been shunted onto you? And I know I don't want you to point a finger at anyone, but what kind of things are you talking?
I'll give you an example from a financial point of view without talking about the service or what it is. So this particular element fits within a bigger contract. This particular one that I'm talking about, it's not the only one, but and it costs roughly £30,000 to be delivered as part of a bigger contract. By the agency not delivering it as part of their contract, it will have to be commissioned as a standalone, which is likely to cost 3 or 4 times as much. And so that makes no financial sense from a partnership perspective. But also it means the only place I have then got to go to fund it is to reduce something else that we pay for to fund it. And so it's the unintended consequence of going, well, actually, why would we not work together? If there's a problem of actually going, well, actually, that is going to cost £30,000-40,000 to maintain it. Surely the first conversation is, well, can we work out how we fund that together, rather than we're just not doing it. So those are the kind of things where I'm saying, as partners, I'd rather we have those earlier discussions to try and resolve things rather than, cost shunt. And the same would apply to me. If I was pulling out of something, I would hope that we would do it in that way.
So, apologies, Chairman, but so it just makes sense to have those. I fully agree with you to have those conversations. So and to have them early before the partner agency decisions are made. How receptive are they being to this? It sounds as though they're not
at all.
Yeah,
which is surprising. But like I say, that's why I'm urging. But everybody has got their challenges. I understand that, so I don't want to.
Sorry, is it the same? Same reason given for all the agencies, or have they got all different reasons?
At the moment, at the moment it's predominantly one, which is around budget pressure, which I understand. So but as I say, partnership working for me is about us finding solutions and working together where we can. And we'll never always agree on everything. Of course, we've got different lenses to look through, but I guess I would ask specifically the question, what more could we do? That's sort of what I'm saying is, let's get around the table when there are pressures to any of us to try and resolve it, because the biggest problem I've got is money. So if I'm suddenly cost shunted, costs in that way, it means fewer police officers, simple as that. And I've nowhere else to go other than reducing things I spend with partners. And then, we're back in the same tit for tat kind of situation, which I want to avoid.
Do you think it's by the time it gets to that stage, sorry, Chairman, do you think it's too late? And is there an opportunity, because these things come around to actually be proactive?
Yeah.
and approach people,
Yes.
this year, for next year's budget. This is what we want to do. This is how we want to work with you.
It's never too late. The thing for me with partnership is communication, talking and trying to work things through. And like I say, we won't always agree, but at least we can find a flight path that works. But, I just want to make sure that we're all sort of working for Team Lincolnshire and trying to solve some of the issues. That's the approach I'm hoping that we can maintain. It's worked pretty well like that for a long time, so hopefully we can keep it.
Thank you. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you, Commissioner. Councillor Woodliffe, and then I'll move on. But final question on this topic, Councillor Woodliffe. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. One question. Is there any possibility of money from other, special grants would tide us over? Because I think the prospects are pretty dire, really. I don't see nothing giving anybody money. Their welfare reforms have crashed. Other things have financial policy have crashed. They're in short of money. They're going to free public expenditure, I suspect. And that's where we are. So, are there any special grants available? And the other possibility, what can district councils do to support you?
I think we do apply for special grants. There's some strict criteria around what we can apply for. It has to be of a significant size and for something that isn't business as usual and those kind of things. But actually, government have supported special grants for us year on year. Really, we've done very well through that process. Although it is usually overspent after about 6 weeks of opening the round. I mean, all you need is some protests in London. They will put special grants in for the cost of those, and with mutual aid, you're talking tens of millions of pounds. Very quickly for those kind of things. But yeah, so we do bid for those. It's still public money. And I suppose what I would say is government can always find money if it wishes to. So whether that's fighting the war in Ukraine, which I'm not saying we shouldn't be, but whether it's supporting that, whether it's whatever, we're talking about billions and billions of pounds that government spends. Frankly, 25 million is a rounding error for the Treasury. It's not a big deal in the bigger scheme of things from government perspective, but it's a huge difference for Lincolnshire. And I think that's the bit that we need to get over. It's a huge amount of public money, don't get me wrong, and we absolutely need to spend it wisely. But from government's perspective, on what they spend globally, it's a tiny amount of money. So they can find it if they wish to. I think what they've got to do is find it in a way that makes it sustainable. So it's not just one off every time, because one of the things that HMIC FRS want to see is us making sustainable long-term plans. Well, we want to do that, but we can't if we're given money one year and no assurance the next. So we want to get to that point. Regarding your other point around districts, I think the relationship is good with districts, in particular with the Community Safety Partnership in the south of the county. It's very effective. The one that sort of covers South Holland, Boston and East Lindsey. It's a pleasure to work with them. So I think that's very effective. Individual officers such as the Community Safety Lead for North Kesteven is exceptional. So there have got some really good individuals around the county that work very well with us. So I think it's just building those relationships, maintaining them and delivering for our local communities. But like I say, I'm not saying that there isn't more to do, but I think it's a good working relationship with districts.
I can understand that, because we have a problem, of course, with drainage. And the small amount of money that's we require from government, which is, 10 million, which we say, for all the drainage boards. They won't give. A half-hour council tax, more than half-hour council tax in Boston, goes directly to the drainage boards. Government seems to be unwilling to give a small amount of money, to make a big difference. It's not just this government, previous ones as well. But I wonder, should district councils take over the ownership of police stations? Take that off you. It's something has to happen, doesn't it? Otherwise, my residents are not going to have police officers. So there's something that has to happen. Districts may well have to do something in order to help finance our police officers. We want police officers available when an issue arises. If there are no officers available, we're on our own, and we don't want that. So the question is, what can districts really do to bolster your finance?
If I may, Chairman, I suppose what I would say though is that through the efficiency work that Lincolnshire Police are undertaking, We're seeing improvements in response times that we want to be able to maintain. So in the midst of all of this, we're improving the service to the public. We're maintaining the call handling times, the abandonment rate is reducing. So actually the service to the public is holding up, but we're getting to that point where we will struggle to continue to do that. So at the moment, I think things are okay, but we just need to get that long-term security. And as I say, districts are important partners, as is county council, as are parishes. And I think at the moment, everybody's working well together. So I just thank everybody for their support.
I understand that. I'm looking further ahead. I think it is working very well. I think the police are doing a brilliant job. But if, you know, if the finance runs out, the police won't be there, and my residents will want support. So in the end, the question is, where does the money come from to keep the police service running efficiently? And if government's not going to do it, I don't think they are, the rest of us are going to pull the weight, aren't we?
No,
I
I
accept that. Yeah,
I don't think you could be expected to answer that, Commissioner.
no, I'm not asking you to answer anything. I'm just making a statement, really.
Okay, we'll move on. Thank you for that. It's been a good debate, 35-minute debate actually, but it just shows you the importance that everybody who's represented here for their communities see this as a priority for you, and I'm sure you. Thank you, Commissioner, for your responses. We'll move on to the agenda then. Apologies for absence, please.
Thank you, Chairman. We've received apologies from Councillor Alan Beale and Councillor Samantha Trotter.
Thank you. Are there any declarations of interest from this morning? Okay, so minutes of the meeting held on the 6th of June. Can I have a proposer for those minutes, please? Councillor Matthews and a seconder, Councillor Pessel. Thank you. Are there any the actions from those minutes? Are they completed, please?
We have one, which is the discussions around joint working and the police and crime plan, and they will take place once the new chief executive has been appointed.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I've got two questions on the accuracy of minutes, if I may.
Thank you.
First is on item 2, which is election of the chairman. In previous years, when the chair and vice chair has been elected, the names of proposers and seconders are recorded in the minutes. This hasn't happened this year. Why? These and related to that, you may recall that I particularly asked for my vote in that election to be recorded in the minutes, but that hasn't happened. So may I request that the minutes are amended accordingly?
Yeah, that's going to be done, Councillor Dux. Thank you.
That's it on item 2. On item 9, I question the title of item 9. I noticed is the balance objective. And that's a bit of a license, and actually is a statutory requirement. And I think it would be better to give it its proper title. But the text under that item talks about ensuring that the panel continue to meet its statutory balance requirements. May I suggest that this suggests that the panel pre this May's election actually met those requirements, which I suggest is at least questionable. I'll make that point. And in bullet 2 on that item, yes, I raised concerns about the political balance, and I recognise that they are a matter for Lincolnshire County Council to resolve. And I'd just like to, if I may, update you and the panel that following the June meeting, I did raise those issues directly in separate meetings with the leader of the council and with the chief executive. As you know, I also raised it with the leader at the full county council meeting last week, and I'm pleased to say he's offered a meeting which we hope to take place following this meeting, and hopefully there would be an early resolution to that. May I also ask for clarity on the length of service of those nominations from the district and county as to, is it for 1 year or is it for the term of the elections? I just think there's some confusion there.
I don't understand that question, councillor Dills.
In the minutes, it talks about the councils being required to give nominations to this body for the coming year.
Yeah.
I was certainly from the county council in the last session, was elected once for 4 years, not for 1 year. So
Right.
I'm just asking for that clarity.
I understand your question. Nicola, do you want to respond to that?
Yeah, so in terms of the period that a member is appointed to this panel, that's for determination by their nominating body. So
Okay.
for example, some district councils have made a decision within when they go to their annual meetings to appoint a member to this panel for a 4-year period. Some have appointed it for 1.
Thank you for that. I appreciate that. Thank you. I'm not sure what it is from the county. I think it's 4 years. But anyway, we can look at that. Finally, given and can I thank members at the last meeting for nominating me after the issue that I had as a co-opted member. But I understand that is subject to approval by the Secretary of State. May I ask if that approval has yet been received?
Nicola, can you respond to that?
That approval has not yet been received, but we will, I can give you some more information on that during our meeting.
Thank you very much, Sharon.
Thank you, councillor Dilks. We'll move on to actions are complete apart from one. Communications from the chairman. I just wanted to point out that we've already talked about the support that you've been receiving around the county commissioner. Councillor Burke and I met with Hamish Faulkner recently to discuss the funding issue. And I know that members around this table been in touch with I've discussed it with their leaders and with their MPs in terms of support. So I as chairman of this panel, I'd like to thank the members of the panel for their support that they've been giving, and hopefully we will achieve what you're aiming to achieve between us. So I just thought I'd mention that. Okay,
Chairman, could I just add my thanks to the panel for that, and for yourselves for meeting Hamish Faulkner, and I just reiterate all of our MPs without exception have been supported, but in particular I would just wish to thank Richard Tice, who has gone out of his way to update me immediately after meetings and interactions with ministers, and has been singularly the most proactive of our members of parliament in working with me in recent months to progress this.
okay, thank you very much. Questions from the public? Do we have any questions from the public? No, we have no questions. So moving on then to item 7, the delivery of the police and crime plan. Over to you, Commissioner. Thank you.
Obviously everybody will have read this, so I'm happy to take any questions, Chairman.
Thank you. I've got a few questions. A simple one for a start. Paragraph 313, the Safer Communities leaders, are they volunteers or are they paid employees?
Thank you for that. No, they are young people volunteers.
Right.
Thank you. So
I just thought in view of your funding situation, like paying more people might create difficulties. That's why I was asking.
no, I mean, this is sort of the latest iteration, if you like, of the Lincolnshire Strong Voices programme. It's a piece of work that my deputy is leading on, and we can come back to you with more detail.
A bit further if you would like.
Yes, please. Yeah.
So we're currently out recruiting for around 15 to 20 young people. We're looking at the age group between 14 to 21. It's to take on that Safer Communities leaders role. We're in the process of writing out to stakeholders in schools from the Deputy PCC to invite applications. Recruitment is currently open until the 8th of October. We've developed this in conjunction with young people. So previously we've talked to you about the Strong Voices group. We engaged with those young people to say what was working, what's not working, how could we do things better. What they're looking to do is have a youth conference where they can make recommendations direct to decision makers. So have those discussions, be better informed about the issues that they have that affect them,
and then make recommendations to them. So the young people will be supported by the office to identify 4 key priorities. And we'll engage with young people around the county via those leaders. So there'll be kind of ambassadors going out and engaging with young people on our behalf. We're looking to ensure that there's a kind of diversity across that youth voice. And then relevant stakeholders will be invited to attend sessions and contribute to discussions so that young people are making informed decisions and recommendations. And then the intention is that those findings will be presented and key recommendations made at a conference where we will have all key partners in the room.
Thank you for that. Thank you very much. Next question. You allude to your performance review meetings with the Chief Constable. Have you identified any areas of concern or risk as a result of these meetings, please?
I mean, that, I suppose it depends how you define that, because obviously there are constantly ebbs and flows in performance. So it might be that you have a particular crime type that needs an additional bit of focus, or it might be that the force has got slightly more or less resource available to tackle a particular area. So it's hard to isolate a particular area to highlight here, because it obviously is encompassed in the entire meeting. So for example, it could be that we're talking about response times, for example, which is a more generic issue, but obviously very key to performance across the board. Or it might be we're talking about the performance in the area of managing sex offenders, which is quite a specific area where the force have put some additional resource, and I'm keen to understand how that how that additional resource is delivering an outcome. So I'm afraid I'm not giving you a very straightforward answer, but it's just really to say that that is the entire purpose of those meetings, really, is to look at that performance, look at the risks in the broadest sense, and then understand what the response is from the force and the chief's view upon it. So it might be, for example, that I might highlight something in the performance data, but he might say, well, actually, I'm comfortable with that because. So it's the understanding as much as it is what actions flow.
Yeah, I understand what you're saying. I just wondered if there's anything from that meeting, your last meeting, that worried you.
Not unduly, in the sense that there isn't a strong emerging risk that wasn't known prior to that. I mean, the key issue is generally how are we going to meet demand with the resource available tends to be the key theme. Because as you'll understand, I mean, for example, I use the Montsevo example, the sort of managing of sex offenders example. To put an additional 5 people in there means 5 people have been taken from other duties. So whilst that ticks the HMIC FRS box of you are closer to compliance when it comes to the number of cases being managed per officer in that department, it has a knock-on effect because you've reduced the number of officers doing something else. So often it's trying to understand the unintended consequence and implication of moving resources and that kind of thing. So there isn't a specific new threat, but as I say, that tends to be the recurring theme is if you're moving resources, what gaps does that leave? And then looking for future monitoring to make sure that we don't obviously end up with a growth issue in the area where we've taken resources from.
Thank you. My final question is, can you tell us what the current situation is regarding your improvement journey? And are you satisfied with the progress so far?
Okay, when you say my improvement journey, are we talking about?
I'm talking about the inspection.
So the forces inspection by HMIC FRS?
Yes.
Okay. Yes, I mean, the meetings that we have are very supportive and useful. So they call, I mean, the acronym being PPOG, but they're sort of the engaged meeting where we have representatives around the table from the inspectorate, from the College of Policing, the National Police Chiefs Council, the Association of Police and Crime Commissioners, the Home Office and others. And they're a really positive opportunity, not just to improve the areas relating to the 5 areas of concern that HMIC have identified, but across the board about the improvement journey that a force is going on. And in particular, obviously, some of the wider challenges. It's often disconcerting for us when they don't want a conversation about funding, yet they do want to know how you're going to improve. At the same time, we're threatening to dismantle the organisation, but we're not allowed to talk about that. And so there is sometimes a little bit of disconnect. However, the meeting we had last week before, was very positive. The chief inspector really does understand, and actually in his recent state of policing report that he's written nationally, he heavily focuses on the situation regarding funding for policing. And progress is definitely being made against most of the areas of concern. I say most because one of them is about having a sustainable long-term budget, which is probably slightly more elusive than are you putting more resources into a specific department and having an impact on it, which is much more measurable and straightforward. So yes, I'm confident that things are moving in the right direction. We've got HMIC inspectors coming in October. It's fine. I would fully expect the engage process to not be a quick one, nor should it be, frankly. Because they wouldn't be doing their job if they looked at something, said it was a conflict, and then instantly said it was fine again. But actually, I think they will be identifying areas where we've made significant progress. But at the same time, they'll be highlighting areas they want to see us do more. For example, one of the areas we highlighted in that meeting was the introduction of the use of video to interview people, particularly. So if your most serious cases are tier 1, we're talking about tier 3 to start with, and then we'll move on up to tier 2 to offer the ability to speed up the process. And what we've seen where this was introduced in Dorset was end user satisfaction was significantly higher because they didn't have the stress and anxiety of having to go into a station and that kind of thing. And actually it speeds up the process. We're having a similar experience here that the rollout, it's been on the east of the county, is working really, really well. Outcomes are better, satisfaction is better. And so we're looking at rolling that around the county. HMIC would love us to do it in one big go. Well, it would take 100 people to do that. We haven't got 100 people. So the chief is having to phase approach that. So that's where they will say, well, we wish you were making more progress. We would say, so do we. But we can only do it within the resource envelope available. So I think the journey is a positive one, going the right way, but we are hampered by how much we can physically throw at any of these objectives at one time.
Thank you. And the visit in October, I'd ask you to report back in our December meeting on how that went. That would be
Yeah, no problem at all.
very helpful. Yeah. Okay, any other questions? Yeah, councillor Marsh.
Thank you. Yes, on the police delivery plan and hitting the targets, is there any intention within the force to not attend certain incidents that the police have always traditionally done, so that they have more time to attend the ones that you want them to? And I'm thinking up here about the times I see patrol car pass parking outside shops in the town where it's a particular pinch point, and they just drive straight past, and don't do anything with it, and they go park up in the marketplace and they're there for 10, 15 minutes. Would it be better for community cohesion for them just to walk back? I've word of the driver, give him a ticket, but you don't want to do that. Is there any other offences like that that the police are thinking that will no longer intend to do?
Not that I'm aware of. I mean, there's certainly no discussion of not attending types of crime. What the force have been out of step with other forces on is that we historically, and I say we, it's the force, not me, have tried to attend many more things than other forces would tend to. So the process around determining what response is required has been and continues to be brought up to date to make sure that the most efficient use of their time is being maximised. Because if you're not careful, what happens is you're attending things where you could have dealt with it in other ways that won't deliver a better outcome for the public, but that downgrades your possibility of attending in a prompt way things that you could have done something more positive with. So I don't think historically they've got that balance right. It's something that operationally the chief is keen to get right. And he's working with the College of Policing in particular to look at best practice and look at other forces and how they model that. And they're trying to bring that into line to make sure that we're maximising the best possible use of officer time. But that's very different from saying these are the 5 crime types we no longer do, which is not what they're doing.
Councillor Dilks.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I just pick up on the chairman's point on safer community leaders, and particularly welcome it that you're recruiting 14 to 21-year-olds to sort of give their views, if I could put it that way. I just fall outside of that category, I'm afraid. So surprising. I really welcome that, and I note that you've got an event coming up in your own word, in our own words, that provides you, the police, and relevant partners with meaningful feedback. And just request, can we be, should we be involved in that in any way? And at least can we get a report on that, perhaps for our next meeting, or following it?
There's certainly no issue with your involvement, Joe.
I think you're referencing the Safer Community Leaders, which is just being established now. So once that's formed, the intention is that they will, at a conference, present back their findings, which the panel would absolutely be invited to attend. And then subsequently they'll publish a report, which again we will bring through this forum.
I welcome that, thank you. And then I also welcome the paragraph and what you say about the ICVs, the independent custody visitors. Particularly, I note that you had an unannounced visit yourself. Again, on the former police authority, I was aware of the work that they do, and I think it is very valuable work to reassure prisoners that their rights are being looked after and protected. So I really welcome that. But I come to my third point, which is my favourite one, you may think, which is PCSOs. And I'd just like to ask, what is I'm aware that I think they do really valuable work, and in at least providing police presence, reassurance and more to local communities where we've got them. I'm aware that we've got a continuing reduction in numbers, but can you just tell us what is the current number on strength of PCSOs across the county?
So there's certainly no active reduction, as in nobody's made a decision to reduce the numbers, but
with people leaving and
retiring, everything else.
Yeah.
And this was the problem when they went to the 50 model. One of the questions I've got for the force is, well, okay, how are you going to maintain 50? Because at what number do you start to recruit? And they never really quite gave me a straight answer to that, frankly. And we are obviously in the position where we're waiting to find out what the finance will do before we could onboard anybody. It would be totally irresponsible to go and recruit 15 PCSOs only to find we have to make them redundant. So we don't want to be in that position. And there is currently no suggestion. We haven't got a plan that says we're making PCSOs redundant. I don't want to suggest that. They are valuable. They do incredible work. We've got plans to increase the number. That's the plan. We just need the funding to deliver the plan. And as I said earlier, the blended approach will mean that we probably could bring in PCSOs reasonably quickly, while the recruitment of officers would take that bit longer. But the current model is working on there being around 35, which is slightly fewer than there currently is. That's not because we want to lose any, but because we know that people will reach retirement age and want to leave and everything else. So from a deployment point of view, the Chief Constable is working out how best to utilise the people he currently has, whilst at the same time working up plans for doing more. In his long-term plan, he would love to see around 1,500 police officers with 150 PCSOs would be what he believes we need to effectively police Lincolnshire. Now, bear in mind, that's similar numbers to Norfolk, Suffolk, places like that. It's not an unreasonable ask, but that would seem to be an appropriate number. But at the moment, 1,186 is our sort of optimum model. But actually, because of the reasons I said, our deployable officers is closer to 950 at the moment, purely because of some people obviously ill, etc., people that are leaving, all the rest. So we've got some work to do to get those numbers back to where we want them to be. But certainly PCSOs are part of the planning for the future.
Thank you. So, from what you said, am I accurate to say that the establishment is still 50,
Yes.
but we think that the current number is somewhere below 40, but above 35?
Correct.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thanks, councillor Dilks. Councillor Fessel.
Thank you, Chairman. Just before I address the point in the report, I would just like to ask the Commissioner if he has by any chance seen a video that has been circulating on social media for some weeks now from a Sergeant Kelly Palmer, who raises the and I have audio if you would like it, that the police has descended into a box digging exercise. There is lack of real policing. There is a fear, officers live in constant fear of being reported or being benched, and this has led to multiple officers being taken off active duty because of what they would describe as spurious claims raised against them. All of it pointing to morale in Lincolnshire Police being at rock bottom. And does he have any thoughts on that? Is he aware of it, or would it be something that he would seek to make comment on?
I suppose, firstly, officers don't work for me, they work for the
No.
Chief Constable. It would be improper of me to comment on an individual officer and their views. What I would say is only yesterday I met with both the the Superintendents Association and the Police Federation representatives. And it's fair to say that the Federation representatives, who represent all PCs, sergeants and inspectors and chief inspectors, they did not raise the issue of morale, and in fact said that in Lincolnshire morale was holding up, and that they did not raise the issues that you have just alluded to, and felt that broadly, we don't live in a perfect world, but broadly, the communication from the leadership on the issues around funding, etc., that were affecting people were being handled well, and that it was broadly understood the difficulties that were going on. So that particular viewpoint is certainly valid because it's that person's viewpoint. I cannot verify that it's more widely felt, other than the temperature I take is through these regular meetings I have with the official associations that represent all of those individuals. And that assurance, as I say, was only gained yesterday, and it is somewhat at odds with what you've just said.
Thank you. I'll go into the meat of the report now. At section 4.13, it mentions the experiences, a report compiled by and in conjunction with the Lincolnshire Sexual Assault Referral Centre, the Sexual Violence Advisor. It says that report is being shared with partners and that will be overseen by the OPCC. Is there any chance that we could get a copy of that because it's not been circulated to this panel?
It absolutely hasn't been, because I felt that what would be of greater value is obviously you see the action plan, so you knew not just what a report was saying, but actually what was going to be done about it and by when. So I'm more than happy to share that, but I don't want to share one bit without sharing the whole thing properly with you. So it's right that the partners involved get to see that first, get a comment upon it, and then an action plan can be drawn up. And then I'm more than happy to share that with you so that you know what's happening in the round, because obviously it wants to be about the delivery as much as it is anything. But it's not because I want to hide anything. It's the opposite. I want to be able to explain to you what's going to be done about it.
Okay, thank you for that. 414, it says the witness service has now been tendered. and has been taken over by victim support. Can you just assure us that was a process that has found best value and best operating procedures going forward? And what, if any, changes will this have an impact on victims?
Yeah, I mean, all commission services obviously go through the procurement rules to make sure that they comply and therefore are, you know, appropriately fair, etc. Usually when these services change, the staff often don't. And it's obviously two people apply and, you know, there will be people that volunteer, for example, around lots of services of this nature. So those often the continuity for victims is almost seamless because it will often be the same individuals that they're dealing with. But that said, it is up to the new provider as to how they deliver within the parameters of the contract that has been set. So obviously we will make sure that the contract is adhered to, that the service is delivered to the standard, but how they deliver it within that obviously is within their gift. So I can assure you that the process has been followed to make sure that the value is fair, the taxpayer, and ultimately we all want the best outcome for victims. So, you know, we also have worked with victim support before. They deliver other services for us, and they're a national, well-respected organisation. So they're not new to this kind of work. So I've no reason to believe it would be an issue.
Thank you.
The Witness Services Action Commission is not locally by ourselves, it's commissioned nationally by central government, but we feed into that. So what we do is input around what a good service would look like, what's worked well with the previous commission, and what we would like to see going forward, which we built into the specification. So we weren't directly involved in that procurement process that we fed in. And one of the benefits that we have is, it was previously Citizens Advice who delivered it, we worked well with.
Yeah.
But actually, as Mark already said, we engage victim support to provide our outreach service for victims. So one of the benefits it will have is we'll be able to work more closely to ensure that there's really good pathways between our outreach service and the support that's provided to the witnesses.
Thank you. In regard to the honour-based abused working group, are you able to provide any statistics as to what the scale of the problem is and whether this whether there's numbers there to justify the extra time and resources being put into a yet another working group?
I mean, it's a difficult one to give numbers for because obviously this is one of those hidden harms. We know it's a growing concern across the county. I know that it's a growing issue nationally. It's definitely something that is a gap for us. And I do believe it's a proportionate response to trying to meet a need, but also to understand the need at a greater level. So I can't sit here and go, this is the number of people that suffer from this any more than you can any other harm that happens often behind closed doors. And often it's trying to unlock communities to get people to talk about the issues. And so when you put a group like this together, what you're trying to do is work out how to actually access the people that otherwise would not be coming forward. The fact that people aren't telling you something doesn't mean the thing isn't happening, and it's very easy to ignore things that aren't being shouted at you. We won't do that. This is absolutely the right thing to do. So it's just one of those things that we will have to sort of see in time. But really what we're talking about is a group of partners who work together already, having conversations and sharing information to try and make sure, you know, they get underneath what is a really difficult problem.
Right, thank you. Finally, Chairman, thank you for talking about the harm that we can see and the harm that we cannot see. In relation to 6.22 and the on paper welcome statistics in regard to burglary, theft, etc. How much credence can we put in those figures if if we're unaware of what percentage of the actual number of offences that's going on and are going unreported, would it be helpful if we could get some of this data supported by effective investigation statistics and effective prosecution outcomes? Because at the moment, those statistics are laudable, but they're somewhat empty and not that helpful.
I'm not really sure what you're after there. I mean, we have some data on what they would call positive outcomes, which aren't necessarily court outcomes. They could be any number of different streams. But I don't believe there are very many people that would get burgled and not report it to the police. Right? That's one of those crime types. You can be pretty clear that the statistics are very accurate. If you come home tonight and your home has been ransacked, you probably are calling the police, right? In a way that I fully understand that, for example, if you experience hate crime, you may or may not contact the police. We work hard to urge people to, but we understand there's an amount of people that wouldn't. I don't think that happens as much around burglary. Nationally, the facts would be that it's very, very accurate. So when we see things such as burglary, vehicle theft, if you want to claim in your insurance, you're going to be reporting it to the police. So those are very accurate, and that's why it's quite useful to look at those, because we can be pretty sure they're a litmus test for some of the other activity that goes on, in the way that some things you might work extra hard, for example, to get people to report. So if you run a campaign around reporting domestic abuse, it's sometimes difficult to understand if the figures then go up, is that a good or a bad thing? Does it mean more people are reporting it, or does it mean there's more of it happening? That's a very difficult scenario. So, and in the same way, if we suddenly ask the police to do more activity around drug enforcement, arresting more people for drug activity is a direct result of that proactivity, not necessarily proof that there is more drug taking. So it's quite difficult. You've got to be quite selective about some of the crime types, which is why we use those, because they are pretty accurate locally and nationally to be able to compare like for like. But if you're saying, do we collect data around positive outcomes? We absolutely do. And we obviously discuss that as part of the performance pack, which is publicly available. We've published that. Right, thank you.
Just that, Mark, in terms of the outcomes information, in terms of prosecutions and outcomes, the Deputy PCC also co-chairs the Criminal Justice Board alongside ACC Nikki Mill. And we do have that board. I'm a member. We look at the detail of the prosecution rates and the outcomes. I think predominantly in here we refer to the actual rates, because this was fundamentally about the policing element of it rather than the wider criminal justice journey. But it is examined in detail.
So, Corey, thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. Page 1920, the final bullet point of 3.1.1. You state in your report that your Deputy Police and Crime Commissioner met with policing colleagues, including CID, to discuss themes and trends being seen across the county and the force violence against women and girls league. There was a story in the press recently that a young woman felt that she had been under-supported by Lincolnshire police, and that her allegation of being spiked and therefore at elevated risk, in my words, being a victim of possibly sexual violence. Are you satisfied? Is the force satisfied that their response is adequate, or is there a review? And can women and girls in Scunthorpe, in Skegness and across the county feel confident that if they make an allegation of spiking or if they've had a date rape drug, that Lincolnshire police will respond and take their allegation seriously?
First thing I would make clear is I'm making no comment on the individual case you're talking about, because that would be inappropriate. But in very general terms, am I ever going to be satisfied that the force are doing everything they ever can? Of course not. That wouldn't be appropriate for me to do. My job is to hold them to account and get more from them. In the same way, I'm absolutely confident the Chief Constable feels exactly the same way, that there is always more he can do. The fact that I have brought in a deputy, one of her key remits is around leading on this work, should tell you how seriously I take it. The fact that her background previously was working in this space as well, it's an important element. And what she's not doing is just being a figurehead role. She's acting in a very interventionist way in leading this work and working very closely with the force to try and improve it. So actually meeting directly with the investigators, understanding what the themes and trends are that are currently going on, and she will continue to do that to see any changes, and then being able to challenge as a result of that information, challenge effectively the senior leadership of the force to try and make sure they're dealing with the current and latest information is really supportive and challenging for them. And it's to drive that level of efficiency in the force. The other thing it does, it enables us to focus prevention activity in the right places. So, for example, historically, we've done campaigns around consent, particularly at freshers and those kind of things. Well, we need to know they work. We equally need to know that they are the areas of concern. So Sarah, by going into these spaces, is really honing what the issues are so that our activity around prevention, the force's activity around what training to give officers, what information to give frontline supervisors, everything is then sort of pointing at the actual issue today, not what we think it was based on 6 months ago. So her role, in part, is to do this and make sure that we're really challenging the leadership of the force to keep their thinking as current as possible. And it equally gives us an opportunity to feed into the national space. So when we're bidding for funding, when as a national association, we're working together to say, well, what do we want government to focus on? All of that latest thinking feeds into that. So I've got every confidence that we are doing what we can to hold them to account and that they are responding positively. But there is never going to be a point where I say we are doing enough.
Thank you for your answer. I know it's tricky, and I do appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Matthews. Thank you, Chairman. Just to cover, and it's been talked about a little bit about today, if a crime is unreported, if it's happening behind closed doors, not reported, it doesn't exist as far as the police are concerned. So I would encourage, and I think it's been mentioned a couple of times today, please, if you are a victim of crime, report it to the police. It may be slightly irritating sometimes to see the crime statistics going up, but it's far better to have a genuine, accurate statistic than people not reporting things behind closed doors. So the other thing that I wanted to speak about was, what is your engagement like with regards to the licensing officers, district councils regarding spiked drinks, etc., etc. I know there are very cheap and simple tests, almost litmus test papers that could go out and be given out to pubs and clubs and bars. Is that something that you're involved in, or is it just down to the licensing officer?
Yeah, I mean, the relationship between training standards, licensing and police is exceptionally good in Lincolnshire. Really, really good. We've seen that through the closure of numerous premises, not exclusively, but a lot of it in the south of the county. The frustration we all feel that we can close a premises and 3 months later it's open again. We need that legislation change because frankly it's nonsense. But we're being hampered by that. So it's another thing our MPs could lobby for. It would save all a lot of time, effort, money and anguish for our communities if these weren't doing. And while I'm on that hobby horse, I think you should have licensed premises for selling tobacco in the same way you do alcohol, because then they could have their license revoked if they're caught selling illegal and dangerous tobacco products. So I would love to see licensed premises for selling of tobacco and vapes in the same way you do with alcohol. So I think the relationship is really, really strong. Spiking is one of those things that it's absolutely imperative people report to the police immediately. The reason is the kind of most spiking is actually overdose. When I say overdosing somebody else on alcohol. You don't tell them you're buying them a double, a triple, and you just give them a vodka and coke, and it's actually a triple vodka and coke. They think they've had 6, they've actually had 18. That's the most common form of spiking there is just giving people drink they didn't know they were taking. And it's making people aware of that, particularly our licensed premises who are serving doubles and triples, predominantly, but not exclusively to men, to give to other people that are sat in the pub and club and whatever. They need to take an appropriate level of interventionist view. And we've got some very good practice. So one of the premises I would highlight around here is the one, it's Stack. Their approach to protecting their clientele is absolutely brilliant. Now, I'm not saying they're perfect. I'm not endorsing them. I'm saying our interactions with them and the way they manage the people that manage their spaces is very, very good. So we've got some really good practice. And it's absolutely imperative that people report, because if they have been drugged, it leaves the system very quickly. So often people might be left frustrated at a lack of police response, but if there's no evidence of a problem, it's very hard for the police to then do something. If you're ringing them 2 days later, there isn't a physical issue because the blood test won't show anything. So it is really important that if people feel that they've been a victim of something, early reporting, but they absolutely will take it seriously. Absolutely, they will take it seriously. We've had cases in Lincolnshire where they've been taken forward to try and get prosecution, which is not the same everywhere you go. But they do need evidence. We live in a society where evidence is king. So people must report early, and trust that the system will do its best for them. But that's the issue with spiking in particular.
Just quickly, I know Stack, and there will be occasions where it's such a dynamic, busy, heaving place that it's really difficult to keep up on that. And just as a note, whenever I ask for a large gin and tonic, I only ever get a single, so it goes the other way around. Very unfortunately.
Thank you. Councillor Shin.
Especially if I'm buying it.
So when it comes to reporting, when it works, it's fantastic. Fortunately, there are a lot of instances where it's really frustrating getting through to reporting incidents. And then when you do, the communication you're given, I've had personal dealings with it, are either not correct or not as effective as what you're told. So, for example, I reported an issue in the centre of town. I was told somebody would be with me within 2 hours, and they would communicate with me. It was actually 2 days later, I got a telephone call around the incident. And things like that do tend to be a little bit demotivating. It puts you off getting in touch again and what have you. What are we actually looking at to try and improve this for people? Because I shout at people and say, report, 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 report. We need to get an accurate picture of what's going on. But when people are coming across this and they're getting that sort of service in the background, how will we rectify that?
Yeah, I think that you're absolutely right. I mean, it's not acceptable to be told it'll be 2 hours and then nobody tell you it's not going to be. And I think that's the challenge, is the communication from policing, not just Lincolnshire, but policing after you've made an initial call isn't good enough. The problem that Lincolnshire would highlight is, well, we lost 5 members of staff, as I just pointed out, from the control room in a week. So answering the calls in a timely fashion is becoming harder and harder, let alone finding the time to then ring people back that you've already heard from. And often it's a case of where has that call gone? So if I'm the call handler and you ring in and I pass that work on to a police officer, it's off my desk. It's now on their desk. If they then say, well, I'll ring them back within 2 hours, the control handler has done their job. If that officer then gets embroiled in something that takes 4 hours, there's maybe not an opportunity for them to even ring it in and say, can somebody else ring this person, even if there happened to be somebody that they could ring it in to then make that call. And that's the issue. So in some respects, it's managing expectation and just being honest and saying, look, we'll do our best to be there in 2 hours, but frankly, it's flat out today and it might be tomorrow. People won't like the message, but it's an honest one, and therefore people will at least appreciate the honesty. And that's something that we're working on. The other thing is putting systems and processes in place to see, well, okay, how can we bring people back if things aren't going to happen in the original timescale envisaged? And that is something that we're working through. And frankly, once we stop standing on a burning platform of funding, that is a key priority for me. But we cannot achieve those improvements at the same time that I'm losing staff hand over fist from the department. So I would assure you that I share your frustration, and I think it's a very valid point. But in the round, we've got to solve that problem alongside many others. But it is one to solve without question.
And it's definitely a priority as we go forward, should the funding come out.
I have literally said it out loud in public. So it's one of my priorities. What I've then got to do is convince the Chief Constable it's one of his priorities. But usually we work very collaboratively, so I can't think it would be, something he would be against.
Fantastic. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bailey.
We've been talking about being open and honest and using genuine statistics and trusting the system. But those of us in particular that have worked within police forces, we encourage people to report things because that needs to be done. These people, their residents then report it, and these crimes then are downgraded. So it might be, off the top of my head, an ABH that has occurred. This then gets downgraded to a common assault. So the response is completely different to a common assault than what would be for an actual bodily harm. So do you think as well that by doing that, you're not helping yourself in relation to the funding? So if the crimes themselves are not looking to be quite as serious because they're being crimed differently, that if they were truly crimed the way that they should be, as per definition, that the funding then would come easier because it's more serious crimes or higher statistics for those crimes are being recorded.
I suppose I'm trying to hear what you're saying in the spirit in which you're saying it, rather than what I'm hearing. So what I'm hearing is you think Lincolnshire Police are gaming the system, and I don't think they are. I think the Crown Prosecution Service will often have a massive hand in what somebody's charged with, what they believe is a fair and appropriate charge when it goes to the criminal justice level. So that's not just the police making that decision. When it comes to what they record, obviously there are checks and balances built into the police to make sure they're recording things accurately. And I would say that the inspectorate obviously inspects those kind of things and have not found an issue in Lincolnshire where they're sort of misrecording things in that way. So I'm not sure that it's a problem of, I'm not saying it never happens that something is misrecorded, but I don't think it's a systemic problem we need to solve. I mean, we obviously have internal audits on things like crime recording. We've then got external through HM and CFRS. All of that happens, and it's not come up as an issue as far as I can tell, unless somebody on the team's telling me otherwise. So I agree we need to report things accurately, really important. I think sometimes you might set off thinking that a particular incident was one thing and it becomes another, and it can go up just as much as it could come down. But I am unaware of there being a specific pattern that's different. So if you've got any information regarding that and want to share it outside of the meeting, I genuinely happily look at it. I'm just not aware of that being an issue.
Can I just pick up the funding?
Yes.
Funding at the moment, there's no relationship to crime volumes, types of crime. It has no impact on it at all. And the work that has been done thus far on a new funding formula will not be related to crime. It's about the drivers of crime as opposed to the absolute numbers.
Okay, thank you very much. Unless there's any other questions, we'll conclude that item on the agenda. So thank you, Commissioner, for your responses this morning.
So just ask one quick question.
Yes.
Another question not related particularly to the plan. I know in West Lindsey, we've obviously got Scampton. There are murmurings again now that there's going to be potentially consideration as asylum accommodation. Have you been involved in or heard of any conversations that could be connected to an increase in your funding for Lincolnshire Police if this was to go ahead?
I
Has
can,
there been any sort of connection?
I can categorically tell you that there has been no communication with me in any way, shape or form from government regarding there being anybody housed at Scampton or what that would mean for us financially, et cetera, et cetera. I've seen a letter of communication from local government to government asking the question. That's the only thing I see relating to that. So I've no information that would suggest that it is or isn't going to be looked at as a potential site.
Okay, thank you. So once again, thank you, Commissioner, and we'll see you and Joanne at 2:00. Okay, Mr. Birch, we'll move to item 8, the complaints position statement, please.
So thank you, Chair. And as you kindly observed, I only have 6 weeks to go. So
Yeah.
this is likely to be the last time you'll listen to me. I would just like to take the opportunity to thank the panel and the officer support over the years in relation to complaints. So it's past and present, because I think the way that we've worked together and moving with also previous officers at East India has been exceptionally good and has contributed to the success of this area of activity. So having said that, there is just one complaint on here. Your officers are aware of the detail of that complaint. As ever, we share everything with you.
Thank you. There is another complaint that's still live, I think, and we're waiting to resolve that. You don't know any timeline around resolving that?
Yeah, well, there's two. There's one that's with the local authority.
Yeah.
And he's dealing with it. That's up to the legal officers within the local authority.
Right.
The current one that is mentioned here, we're on the process of recording.
Yes.
But we wanted to give a full answer because it's involved other officers across the force in the response to this one. So give a full answer in fullness of time. We're hoping that the CFO is back next week to finalise ours.
Okay, thank you. I think you and I are probably the only ones in this room that've been on this panel to do with the police and crime panel and the police and crime commissioner since day one.
So we're just you then, very soon.
I'll say at the beginning.
Sorry?
Police and crime panel.
I apologise, Councillor Woodley. I do apologise if that's not.
Such a quiet person.
Yeah, you're very quiet. Sometimes, yeah. So I'd like to thank you for your service to us, to the panel, in respect of in the role of Chief Executive, and in respect of the matters surrounding any complaints. You've been the Chief Executive for 2 commissioners. Sure you've had some interesting times during those periods. But more importantly, I wish you, on behalf of the panel, a very happy and healthy retirement. So thank you.
Very kind. Thank you very much.
Looking forward to the book, Malcolm.
Yeah.
I think the chair just alluded to things that perhaps I shouldn't be talking about. We have to police authority as well.
Thank you. Thank you.
I will be observing the confirmation here, just you'll see me at the back. So.
Yeah, no, that's fine. That's fine. Absolutely. Okay, we'll move on. I'm very much aware of the time. It's 25 to 1, so we need to move on fairly quickly. Item 9 is the recruitment to the police and crime panel. I know, Mr. Williams, you've been heavily involved in this. Would you chair that panel? Yeah, I suppose I do. Yeah. We've got to be just a little bit careful on this in terms of this. We've got to be a ministerial group, so we can't name any individual or discuss that individual in any detail. But I'll pass over to you, Mr. Williams, for any comments.
I'll be very brief. Yes, it was a successful outcome in the sense that we found somebody we felt was eminently appointable. it was less successful in the sense that we were hoping to find somebody who had a specific accountancy, scrutiny, budgetary type background. Candidate who we have recommended, she does have plenty of experience in that field by virtue of being, I think, the chief executive and being on various boards and so on, but not a specific accounting or budgetary ticket, if you like. And quite interestingly, actually, that there was one other candidate who perhaps might have offered that, but we felt that she was more suitable as a member of the panel and be able to contribute more, which I thought was an interesting outcome. Anyway, so I think you've seen the details of the individual that we are proposing. The only final comment I'd make was that we agreed at the end that it would still be a good idea if, as a panel, we went out once more, because originally we had said that we would go out for 2 independent co-opted members. We said it would be a good idea to go out and be a little bit more specific and rigorous in terms of identifying somebody who meets that budgetary accountancy requirement, and that really is an absolute as far as that recruitment process is concerned. So I think we probably want to be a little bit more precise and specific in terms of the recruitment material, and we'll be a little bit more focused in terms of the interview process and the outcome as well. So that's all I have to say, unless anybody has.
Thank you. Anybody got any comments? I think the panel did approve that we went out for 2 co-opted independent members, so we don't need to make that decision today. And I think we should continue with that process, which would be more focused on the financial side of the skills. Yeah. So thank you to you and the members that have been involved in this process. Thank you very much.
Can I move that we accept the recommendations as printed?
Yeah. Propose a seconder for that, councillor Sheard. All in favour? Unanimous. Thank you, councillor Dill. So moving on to item 10, National Association of Police, Fire and Crime Panels. Councillor Burke, have you got anything to report?
We did have a meeting a couple of days ago, and it was more about what we were doing and thinking than what they were doing. Because they're very interested in the fact that we are operating in an environment that many of them are moving towards. So, they were very interested in how the mayor was operating. They were very interested in how the new leader of the council was operating. Interested in change that's happening in Lincolnshire, which they anticipate could well happen elsewhere. So I was really reporting back to them, I hope accurately, what we were seeing. In terms of policing, they were very, very concerned about our level of funding. It was recognised that we are possibly the most vulnerable force in the country. And I think that I reflected that the panel was taking that seriously. Excuse me, and raising that with the Commissioner, and in fact the Commissioner raising it with government. And I was able to report to them what you've already reported, Chair, that you and I met with Hamish Walker MP. And I wasn't fully aware of all the other meetings that had taken place, but I kind of implied that other panel members meeting with government and with MPs, and I believe too with the leader of the county council. So that's I think that's where we are.
Okay, thank you very much. Any questions for councillor Burke?
Just a quick bit of I had some agenda 10 on my electoral system. It's 9/11. Because it was a verbal.
Okay, we'll now move on to the work programme. There is a paper, appendices, submitted by Mr. Williams on this paper, on this document, and I can find it. It's an outline paper for a proposal for subcommittees. Mr. Williams, over to you. Thank you.
Yeah, okay. I'll try and be as quick as I can, mainly because my tooth is killing me, and I've happily got an appointment at 2 o'clock this afternoon.
Well done.
Hence my absence this morning. Sorry, it's killing me. Right, yeah, this stems from a discussion I think we had in panel quite some time ago about the notion of subcommittees and so on. And I did mention, I think I circulated at that stage, not to the new members, you wouldn't have had sight of that, but I did a sort of a brief assessment of what other police and crime panels did, how they structured subcommittees they ran and so on. But I settled on Avon and Somerset as being quite a good model, I thought. Now, unfortunately, I did try and approach them to pick their brains on how effective their structure was, and I'm afraid the chair didn't get back to me, which is a shame. But nevertheless, broadly speaking, what it looks like is that they have a system of subcommittees that, in my view, suggests that they have a very good collaborative relationship with the Police and Crime Commissioner. I do sense actually that our relationship with the Police and Crime Commissioner seems to have improved a little bit since I've been on the panel, which is good, because certainly that wasn't always the experience. But nevertheless, this proposal really comes out of a sense that when we last discussed this in detail in the panel, we could perhaps have a more effective and collaborative and closer relationship with the Police and Crime Commissioner beyond just meeting with him in this forum four times a year or whatever it is that we do meet with him. So this isn't a suggestion that we should have 5 additional subcommittees. What this is an indication of the nature of framework, if you like, of engagement and discussion and scrutiny that other panels seem to have successfully pursued with the Police and Crime Commissioner. You could quite reasonably say that we do all of these things anyway in these meetings, and I wouldn't disagree with that. What I would say is I'm not sure that we do everything in sufficient depth, detail, or with sufficient understanding, or in a fashion that enables a dialogue rather than a question and answer session, that enables this panel not only to understand more clearly what's going on in the Police and Crime Commissioner's world, but also for us to work with him to have those interventions, suggestions and proposals and so on that we can provide with him to help him do his job. So the suggestion I'm making really is that you might like to consider, or we might like to consider, whether it is worth establishing any of these. Now, the Commissioner, when we've made a sort of general proposal, I think I probably made this general suggestion to you in the past that we could work better together, and said, well, yes, fine, I'm open to suggestions. Come and tell me, and I'll we'll take it forward. So I say take it forward. He's happy to consider it. So I don't think I need to say any more than that, other than the final comment, is that when you're looking at these proposals, for example, the annual report subcommittee, well, I sort of did the annual report and floated it around. It doesn't need to be a subcommittee, so, but it's just an activity, and it happens to be something that another panel did as well. The complaints subcommittee, I understand, I think we're sort of reasonably far forward on that being
Are you aiming to meet in October?
Yes,
Complaints subcommittee.
twice in October.
Twice, there are going to be 2 meetings in October.
Yeah, so great.
So
So,
we're
so really what I'm saying here is there's 3 other suggestions there. There might be others that you have in mind that we might want to consider. And I'm not going to suggest here, because we'll all have our own views, how each subcommittee or how a subcommittee would actually function. That would be for that subcommittee to determine for itself.
Yes.
In order to get the best outcome. But I have given you an indication of the sorts of things that it might be engaged in. So that's enough for me for that.
Thank you. Councillor Woodruff?
I just wonder about the cost of this, and who will bear the cost of the office of the board?
Well, it'll come out of the Home Office grant.
Is that sufficient?
I don't know. But it depends how much you're going to spend.
We had an exchange only, didn't we? And I think you suggested there may be capacity for some additional activity, not all of it,
I mean, my personal view is we need a complaint subcommittee, and that's happening. That's already in motion. There's capacity issues for our officers, and I just wonder whether a budget scrutiny group, the police and crime plan group, could come together, because the money is linked to the delivery of the service.
Yeah.
That would be my proposal, that we have two subcommittees, a complaint subcommittee and a police and crime plan and finance scrutiny group. Sorry, Councillor.
That's all right. I was just going to say that the Public Trust and Confidence Advisory Group, I'm not sure that it needs to be a subcommittee, but I do think it has great relevance in bringing forward public perception. I mean, public perception really feeds into all of the key elements that policing potentially serves. So whether it's actually for it to be a subcommittee, but it is something definitely to look at how we have conversation around that and how we present that in a better way in this committee.
I think that the existence of that committee is what probably drew me to Avon and Somerset more than other forces. And the reason I thought that is that really helps to focus attention on particularly elected members' other responsibilities in representing your communities and so on, and providing that direct interaction interface between the police and you in that sense. And I think the other thing to say about all of these groups, but the budget scrutiny group as well, we already have a panel meeting where we talk about the budget.
Yes.
But that would enable, if you like, that working with the Police and Crime Commissioner and his accountant, while they're building the case. So actually, a lot of the questions that we might then spend a couple of hours asking have sort of been fleshed out, and who knows, even suggestions might come from it as well, in terms of, all right, well, how often do we actually relate the budget scrutiny to the outcome of the annual questionnaire, the survey that he does, and his priorities, and how that reflects it, the priorities that he's identified in the police and crime plan, police and crime plan, which he doesn't have any key performance indicators in. So, it just helps to have a more detailed and in-depth discussion and understanding.
Councillor Burke, did you want to come in?
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, just one of the things that interests me when I'm talking to the national panel, they're very careful to say they don't regard local panels as scrutiny panels. And I think when I raised this with the Shadow Home Secretary, she then was, she thought, and that was Yvette Cooper, she thought that actually they were scrutiny bodies. And as a councillor, I'm very familiar with the scrutiny model, and I get it. I sense we're thinking about scrutiny a bit more than we were in the conversation we're having now. That's interesting to me, because I would suggest that in practice we do scrutinise the Police and Crime Commissioner. Well, if you then, as David is now doing, linking it to things like performance indicators, then I think we're moving further down. But I'm positive about it. Further down that road of scrutiny in the way that we do to other bodies.
Thank you, Councillor Burke. Councillor Dilks, did you want to come in?
I did, thank you. I support what you say, Chairman, about possibility of creating two scrutiny groups. I do like the term scrutiny groups. I've got to say, I think there is scope for further, deeper scrutiny into some of the issues than we just come and, I wouldn't say we gloss over it, but the deep scrutiny probably isn't there. And on the complaints committee, I certainly back that idea, and I say thank you, David, for the work you've done on this. But I do recall that going back to as a member of the old police authority, I was on the complaints committee, and we used to go, for meetings at Netlham, and we were given the entire complaints files were placed on the table, and we dip sampled what we wanted to. Took them out, read them, and reported back to the rest of the meeting on what we thought to the outcomes. And some lessons were learned from that, I believe, and it was improved. That doesn't seem to be happening, and, I'm not sure it is at all now, and I welcome that. I really would welcome that. And it's about reassuring the public that when they complain, it is properly dealt with, probably that way, yeah. Thank you.
I mean, in terms of the complaint subcommittee, they will be meeting in October. And it may be, and it will be a decision of this, whether the panel takes over the management of complaints rather than the chief executive of the police. So that, and if that happens, we will have that situation that you've just described.
And probably an opportune time with the retirement of the.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. Any other comments? So, what do you want to do then?
Well, I think the outcome is what is agreed, so complaints is happening anyway, and a report will happen anyway. Your proposal about combining the budget scrutiny and police and crime scrutiny group, that sounds like an idea that had broad acceptance.
Yeah.
The parking the public trust and confidence advisory group for the time being. I think it's worth keeping in the back of our mind. So the issue there is, do we like the idea of a combined scrutiny group? And if we do, who's going to take it forward? I'm not sticking my hand up to do this. It looks like it. So if you want to do it, and then let's get someone to just run with it.
Yeah.
If I might add to that, Jeremy, it would make sense, wouldn't it, if we are gonna, if we do change the way that complaints are handled, that public trust kind of comes within that, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Complaints.
For me, I think
Those two kind of do go together.
I think for me, public trust comes in with the annual report because we are showing the public the annual report and they will read that and trust that we've done our job properly. Put in either one, couldn't you?
Okay, so that's the proposal, that we have two subcommittees, complaints already planned, and the budget scrutiny and police and crime plan to merge. Because at the end of the day as well, it's your time as local councillors, whether you've got time and capacity to be involved in all this work as well. So, and the officers' capacity. So I think two of those five is a reasonable decision.
If I may, and mindful of other colleagues, other commitments, I mean, I do have other commitments as well. I'm happy unless there's somebody who would really like to do this, and if that's the case, then fine, I'm very happy to step back. But I'm happy to sort of get the ball rolling on this, not necessarily with a view to me chairing it, but just get the ball rolling. We'll have to set up meetings with PCC's office at some stage and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
But, so I make that offer provided my tooth surgery is successful.
Sure it will.
I come back.
Hopefully somebody pass the ball across the stand.
There we go.
Okay.
If David does that, then I will happily commit time to help out with that.
Thank you. So it's been proposed by David, seconded. I suppose I second it because I proposed that merger. All in favour? Yeah, thank you, David, for all that hard work that you've done. Let's hope by 3 o'clock this afternoon you'll be feeling that. So back on my iPad, 49,000 pages. I think it's taking next meeting. All right, thank you.
After December.
Date for the next meeting is the 12th of December. Thank you. And I'll formally close the meeting now, but we are regrouping at 2 o'clock for the